I woke up with a little tickle in my throat this morning, so this one may sound a little gravelly at times, and maybe my voice will break like I'm 12, like it did a few times in preparation for this. So there's a new version of Ollama out, and its headliner is support for... No, but that was a mind-blowing ride in 1987.
The Last Starfighter.
Nah, but man, when that came out when I was 14 in 1984, wow. And it seems to have held up well. There we go. Starcoder 2. This is a new software development model by the I have seen a lot of requests out there on the Ollama Discord asking for this model. It required updates from Llama CPP in order for it to work, and those changes were merged a few days ago. Why are folks excited? I'm not exactly sure. I think the main thing going for it is that it's new and shiny. Everyone loves new and shiny. You look at the Blokes Discord and the request for new models seems to be flooded by folks who just want to be first on the request. They tend to not actually care about what's new and interesting about the model. They just want to be first to point to the new and shiny. Maybe it's the same here. So Starcoder V2 is out. Is it interesting? I guess so. I was probably the third or fourth YouTuber you've seen covering this model. And if you look at all the others reviewing the model, it turns out they don't actually say anything beyond reading snippets from the blog post and the paper. And so you may come to the end of those videos thinking that this model seems to be incredible. But I think the more interesting story is actually the team behind it and seeing them deliver a model that moves incrementally forward and may make room for some amazing things in the future. Big Code is led by Hugging Face and ServiceNow. Sure, Hugging Face makes a lot of sense there, but ServiceNow? That seems weird. I remember them just being another PagerDuty clone, but I guess they've been successful and done some acquisitions. But anyway, let's move on. When Starcoder 1 came out, it was a pretty big deal. It may have been the first of the models that really focused in on coding. Unfortunately, it was in a format that wasn't supported by Llama CPP, and thus not supported by Ollama. But when it came out, Llama CPP was still a young project, if it even existed. And the Ollama team? Well, they were focused on making an amazing tool for SSH key pairs at keypair.com. It was a few months into the Ollama project that support for Starcoder came along. And by that time, there were plenty of other coding models on the platform. So what was amazing before was kind of, ho-hum by the time it got into Ollama. Starcoder 2 looks like a nice update to the original, and days after its release, it's on Ollama. Though as of the recording of this video, it's still a pre-release of the software. Hopefully by the time you see this, it'll be a full release for Ollama. So what's different? Well, a lot has changed in the world of LLMs in the year since V1. The training set has grown a lot. It's trained on a data set called
The Stack V2,
which is 4 trillion tokens of coding projects. That's up from the 1 trillion tokens in V1. And whereas V1 of
The Stack
pulled from 80 or so languages, V2 uses over 600 languages. I got a few questions on a recent video asking if a few super niche esoteric languages were supported by some other model. Of course they weren't, but there's a good chance that Minecraft-specific language you love is supported by this model. If you wanted to download the full dataset, prepare to delete everything on your system because it comes in at 67.5 terabytes. Terabytes! Okay, the context window has also increased from 8K tokens to 16K tokens, which is great. There's also the introduction for a sliding window attention. This doesn't really decrease the memory size, but allows for the massive reduction in number of dot products it needs to generate for each token. So there's a minimal reduction in capability with a massive reduction in compute needed to calculate the next token, ideally making it feel faster. I believe this sliding window is something that was introduced in the Mistral model. Now, there are a bunch of models that support these larger context sizes, but when you load up the default model in Ollama, it will allow for a context size of 2K. Originally, the models were set to the full context size, but folks were trying out 7B models on laptops with 8 gigs of RAM and irate when they got out-of-memory errors. The context size blows up the requirements a lot. If you want the model to have the full context size, have the memory, but then create a new model file with a from instruction pointing to the model name and a parameter instruction of numctx set to 16384. Then run Ollama create full Starcoder in that directory and you're set. Starcoder 2 is focused on the fill in the middle use case. The idea there is that you provide code before and after what you want the model to generate. This is quite a bit different from providing a question that you want the model to answer, which is the case for instruct and chat models. So if you open Starcoder in most GUIs and ask a question, you will most likely get garbage. So to use Starcoder 2 for a fill in the middle, you need to use a few special tokens to indicate the beginning and end and where in the middle you want new stuff to go. We can go to the Hugging Face repo for one of the Starcoder 2 models and take a look in the tokenizer config file to see the actual values. They are FIM prefix, FIM suffix, and FIM middle. So you'd have your code block and at the beginning add FIM underscore prefix with angle brackets at the beginning of all of that. And then FIM underscore suffix with angle brackets at the end. Then whatever you want to be filled in would be indicated by the FIM underscore middle with angle brackets. Normally, you aren't going to put these tokens in yourself, but rely on some other tool to fill them in for you. 20 is a great option for this in VS Code, and it supports fill in the middle. And it looks like it already has support for the Starcoder format. So is Starcoder v2 any good? Well, I'm not entirely sure. And no matter what I say, you should ignore me and judge it for yourself. Now, I am sure there is someone who is going to get to this point and scream at their monitor that the benchmarks prove that this model is better than X or Y or Z. Sure, if you believe benchmarks, then this seems good. We can look at a cool chart and it seems convincing. But if it does, then you should check out this book called How to Lie with Statistics by Daryl Huff. I've had this for about 15 years, but it was published in the 1950s, and it's just as great today. Often, with the benchmarks, you find models that perform really well according to the benchmark, but then are terrible in actual practice. And every model shows the other models they perform better than, and mysteriously leave out all the others. And there are all sorts of other reasons to not take the benchmarks as the gospel. That said, they are a great indicator to show that perhaps things are getting better, but they should never be used to say that one model is categorically better than any other all the time. And then there's a whole need for benchmarks to be open source, but let's not go there. If you made it this far, you're waiting for one of two things. Either you are waiting for my 20 seconds of awkward silence at the end of all my videos, or you're wondering when I'm going to cover the rest of the new things in version 0.1.28 of Ollama. Apparently there is better support for Llama 1.6. Those are the vision models that let you process an image into a text description. In some initial testing, it seems to do a better job of working with multiple images, which could be really interesting. There is one user who demonstrated that if they changed models super quickly, over and over and over again, 20, 50 or more times in a row, Ollama would hang. So for that one person, it's fixed. Apparently there's another person who tried to install Ollama on a Windows box with less than 4 gigs of disk. That now works, though it doesn't take many models plus the OS to rip through that number. A more common issue was that on Apple Silicon, folks would run out of memory, even if the model should fit. Ollama is doing a better job there. Now, in my last video about Docker and Ollama, someone asked for the commands for Podman. I used to co-host a podcast with a guy named Brett Fisher called DevOps and Docker Talk. We had the core devs for Podman on the show, and they tried to convince us that Podman was better than Docker in some way. But I'm still using Docker. Anyway, Podman was having problems detecting NVIDIA GPUs, and now that should be fixed. Another side note, if you missed my appearance on DevOps and Docker Talk, I'll be on another episode very, very soon. And now that embeddings in Ollama is actually useful, one specific scenario with an empty prompt won't hang the embedding endpoint anymore. And that is what's new in Ollama 0.1.28 as of the recording of this video. And what's special about Starcoder 2. Now, whenever there's a new pre-release, things get added and taken away as the release gets close. So don't be surprised if the final feature list is a touch different. What do you think? Do you like Starcoder? Do you prefer a different coding model? Let me know in the comments below. And if you have any ideas for future videos, let me know about those too. Thanks so much for being here. Goodbye. I promise, it's water. Oh, there goes my voice.